Welcome to the Ford Foundation. My name is Monica Aleman Cunningham, and I am the International Program Director for our gender justice work here at the Ford Foundation. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the institution and our leadership. As I was thinking about this evening, I kept going around in my head about what is it that I could say, and I decided to take you a little bit on a journey. When I was growing up in the 80s in Nicaragua, one of my favorite things to do was to run around in the streets bare feet, and to do so to feel the power of the soil, of the earth. But my most favorite thing to do was to run around when it was raining, so that I can feel the rain coming through that. Unfortunately, on occasions, that beautiful feeling of running on the streets was interrupted. And it was interrupted because it was a time of war. And if you have never felt war, you might never understand the importance of the United Nations. And that's what I want to bring and talk to you about today. I think we are at a crossroads in the world. And for children like I, and for many children around the world right now that are experiencing war, that are experiencing exclusion and discrimination, it is absolutely essential for us to believe and create global governance institution and to create and to believe in the United Nations. And in order for us to create and believe in the United Nations, we need to believe in multilateralism. And that's what we are doing here. So my hope today is that you don't only think back of that memory of mine, of running around bare feet and having that feeling of freedom, but you also take with you into this conversation the power of promoting the responsibility to protect, the responsibility to live a life free of violence, and the responsibility to care for each other. And that is what multilateralism is all about. It is the responsibility to care for each other, because the problems that we have right now can only be solved by working with each other. So with that spirit and that commitment, I want to invite Susana Malcorra and María Fernanda Espinosa to the stage.
Hello? Yes. Monica, thank you. Thank you, because what you just said summarizes what we care about and what is being challenged these days. And having it from the horse's mouth, somebody who had lived through those difficult times in Nicaragua, as there are so many difficult times in so many parts of the world today, and saying it the way you said it, makes sense of what we do. So thank you. Welcome to our meeting today, and thanks again to the Ford Foundation for the support. We were here 2 years ago to release the first version of the Women in Multilateralism report. I'm sure some of you were here that day. We are back today with the third version, the 2025 Women in Multilateralism report, which we will take you through as we speak. But let me start by addressing the elephant in the room. Why is it that we, GWL Voices, keep talking about women in leadership within the multilateral system in these days where it seems like the waves are going in a different direction? That's the elephant in the room. We all know that we are living through times where there is a backlash on women's rights, women's empowerment, women's leadership. It seems like we have entered a new era of masculine leadership, that you have to be different from being a woman to stand a chance. So you might wonder, why is it that we, GWL Voices, still come back with this discussion? First of all, it is our mandate. It is the reason why we were created, we were established 6 years ago. In fact, 6 years ago, last Saturday. And the question is, if things are going in the direction that we see them going, is this the right time to speak about women leadership? And probably the question is, when is the right time? It's a fair question, but let me tell you that when you look back in history, it seems like it's never the right time to speak about women, women's leadership, women's empowerment, women's rights. If you go back to the 19th century, when women were asking for the right to vote, of course it wasn't the right time. There were other issues. If you then go to the 1920s, you find that women started to fight for their right to participate at the academic world, to have the right to become doctors or lawyers. And again, there were other issues. It wasn't the right time. Then you go into the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and women started to ask for better pay and for health and reproductive rights. And of course, it was not the right time. The time wasn't right in the 80s and the 90s when women started to ask for their fair share of participation in the political life and in corporate life, where they were nowhere to be seen at the time. During all those decades, women were asked to be patient, to wait for the right time, to wait for a change that will then lead to the right time. And now again, in the 21st century, we hear the same voices, the voices that say, it is not the right time. It is not the time to discuss this question. Climate change, armed conflicts, trade wars, all those things are absolutely critical. No one says that they are not. But when was the time when the world lived without crisis? One can say these are bigger, larger, more expansive, but the reality is that crises are always there. But if women were to wait for the right time, we will still be waiting. That is why we in GWL Voices are absolutely committed to reporting in the reality that we report year in and year out. When the political winds are in our favor and when they are against us. And probably when they're against us is when we need to report even more strongly. Because we are convinced that only bringing sustained attention to this matter, continued pressure to this matter, we have the hope to bring results. María Fernanda?
Wow, that was powerful, wasn't it? I think we're here, we're all convinced. First of all, thank you for being here. Thank you to the Ford Foundation, to Monica. I think, look at that. This is the cover of our new report. Look at this beautiful image. And you know that we follow 54 of the main international organizations, mostly UN, but also development banks, the World Trade Organization. I don't know, the acronym came only in Spanish to me, but basically we are delighted to report that, as you can see, 24 of the 54 organizations that we cover are now headed by women. That's 2 more than in 2023, and it means that 44% of these institutions are now headed by women. So these are good news. It looks beautiful. We saw, look, even nicer, basically, last year, we saw the reappointment for a second term of Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, who heads the World Trade Organization in 2021. As we recall, we were really happy. In 2021, she became the first ever woman in history to hold this critical position. So kudos to our friend and sister Ngozi. We also saw Kristalina Georgieva, the second woman ever to run the International Monetary Fund. You would all remember Christine Lagarde. She was also reappointed for a second term. And we're saying this over and over again because we have witnessed so many one-and-done cases. In this case, the reappointment of Kristalina Georgieva. We also saw, good news at UN Habitat, which has, a woman replacing yet another woman. And that was Ana Claudia Rosbach from Brazil, appointed executive director of UN Habitat, and also following the footsteps of Maimouna Sharif, one of our GWL members now, and a current mayor of Kuala Lumpur. She is the 4th woman to serve in that capacity. So all these are good news. And let's look at Nadia Calviño. She began her term as the first woman to head the European Investment Bank in 67 years of history. So this is also a powerful Spanish lady taking over the European Investment Bank for the first time ever. And Celeste Saulo. She took over as Secretary General of the World Meteorological Organization, the first time ever after 74 years of history of male-only leadership. So all of these are really, really good news. This means that in 2025, only 19 of the organizations that we monitor have that unfortunate distinction, quote unquote distinction, they have never been led by a woman. And here they are in case we need a reminder. I'm sure here in the room you might perhaps have worked for one of these organizations. And I would like to leave the logos of these organizations so we keep them in mind for future, elections or appointments. I think, it really makes sense to monitor and follow what happens with these organizations. Of course, I would not go one by one because it would be long, but you can see that, and I think that we can do better on that front. And here they are. Let's, monitor them, and let's hope that next year we will have good news and show less logos of the 19 organizations that have never elected a woman as their leader, elected or appointed. So let me now turn to Susana, please.
Thank you, Maria Fernanda. In 2024, we saw some modest but important progress in the senior management of organizations. This is an area where policies and official commitments by senior leadership made a revolutionary impact in recent years. And I have to recognize the Secretary General and his commitment to doing this. Many organizations have adopted a gender-blind hiring system, which helps in this regard. and have promoted qualified women professionals. These policies have shown good results very rapidly. In fact, we see now that in senior management teams, 42% are women out of these 54 institutions. I always emphasize we are looking at 54 institutions. 42% are now women in their senior management teams. And the number of organizations that have more than 40% women in senior management has moved from 22 last year to 25 this year. So we see progress, and we see progress where the leadership level of the institution and the leadership level of the system, the Secretary General, has shown commitment to doing it. It is important that we have this proof of the pudding in these institutions. For that, those of us who started back in the 80s, in the 90s in the system, and some of us are here sitting around this audience, this is an astonishing change. It is a real serious change. And it is a proof, once again, that pressure and attention makes a difference. That's why we keep pushing, and we will keep pushing. Sadly, we don't have the same good news on governing bodies. This year we decided not only to look into the organizations of the system, but into the governing bodies of some of these institutions. We all know that it's not the institutions that choose who represent the member states in the governing bodies. It's the member states themselves that do it. In 2024, the governing boards of international organizations continue to lag behind in what is related to gender parity. Despite the abundance of absolutely qualified women in diplomacy, we still see an incredible low figure in the international system representing member states, where it's clear that men are still the first option for governments to choose. Let me get this right. And this is where you see we analyzed 27 governing bodies associated to the institutions that we saw before, only half of them. And you can see how far to the left the figures are. This illustrates that women are underrepresented on the board of almost all institutions that we did analyze. The average is 28%. So the average women representation in these 27 governing bodies is 28%, compared to 30 in 2023, which means that we have gone back. And to us, this is important because there is not a sustained commitment to have women. And that's, again, why we believe that we should keep pressure and attention on this matter. And in 11 of these organizations, women make less than a quarter of this governing body, less than 25%. And this leads us to look into the most important governing body of the system, the General Assembly, the most transversal, the most democratic, the most representative. And María Fernanda will take us through where we stand regarding the General Assembly.
Beautiful picture, isn't it? Well, let me start with a little quiz here. Raise your hand if you've ever attended a working session of the UN General Assembly in this room. Okay, you can freely raise your hand. Okay. So for those of you, of course, the first row, the ambassador of Germany, she basically lived there for long and long hours. But, you know, for those that, of you that have been there in this incredible space, do you remember ever thinking that there seemed to be a lot of male faces in the room? I had that thought when I was ambassador of my country to the UN. So many men around. A lot, the ambassador of Germany is saying, a lot. And, oh, it wasn't you, so was it Jesse? Okay. And perhaps you wondered, is this just my impression? Is it a coincidence? Or is it something more fundamental, more structural? And so this year, we decided to find out. So building on our earlier work, the organizations, the leadership, the governing bodies, in looking at history, of course, basically we set out a study to identify the gender composition of permanent representatives to the General Assembly in every one of the 79 years since the UN was founded. And believe me, this was not easy. And for the ones looking at old papers in the system, because most of the information was not easily found online. There was like blank years that you could not find online. It took us months, literally, the research team, a member of the research team is sitting back there. It took us months of painstaking archival research to find and check the names of every one of these appointees. And believe me, that was un trabajo de hormiga, as we say in Spanish. I mean, it was a very detailed work. This is the kind of pieces of paper and booklets that we had to do research about. It wasn't, again, easy. Data is fundamental. We are an organization that is evidence-based, and we really want to show what is happening with the female permanent representatives at the UN. So, in the end, we determined that more than, listen to these numbers, 2,800 people have served as UN ambassadors since 1947. 2,800. So, let's have a little fun here. So over the past week, we've been releasing some simple quiz questions in our social media channels. It has been huge success, people trying to guess how many, how much, the percentage. So we suspect the people in this room today know a lot about the UN. That's why you're here for, basically. So let's quickly test your knowledge. The question is, how many UN General Assemblies have taken place without the participation of a single female ambassador? How many of them? And these are the choices. Is it 3, 7, 12, 20? And remember, we are talking about 79 times that the UN General Assembly has met. So look at these options and, guess. Say 12. Decide. 20. Back there. 20. Many have said 20. And the ones that have said 20 have the correct answer. So, in all, 20 UN General Assemblies have taken place without the participation of any female ambassador. So these are really not good news. 1978, 20th century, is the last year of all men, and curiously, 1978 is a landmark year. Why is that? It's not another quiz, but it is the year of the adoption of CEDAW. So we will never forget that 1978 was the last year that UN General Assembly met without the presence of female ambassadors. Remember, CEDAW first time in all of that. I think it makes sense to remember history. So here, this is the second quiz. How many countries have never appointed a woman UN ambassador? And here we have options, again, for the quiz. 16, 51, 27, 73. Let's go this side. What is your guess? So, how many countries have never appointed a woman UN ambassador? You already said last time. Over there, just guess a number. Huh?
51.
51 here, this side. 73 here in the middle. Well, I hear, there is, I think you know a lot because you're absolutely right. So the right answer here is out of all member states, 193, 73, more than a third of UN membership have never appointed a woman to this role. And you have this world map that shows clearly which are the countries that have never appointed a female as UN permanent representative. And this is a bit shocking, quite honestly. And so more than 2,800 individuals have served as UN ambassadors since 1947. Can you guess how many of them were women? The last quiz. Well, I want to hear the room. Again, let's guess. How many women have served as UN ambassadors since 1947? Laura, dilo. 7%. 7 or 16, here in the middle. You knew that. You did the research with us. Yes, it is 7. So only 7% of all permanent representatives to the United Nations have been women. This is our, finding of this year's report. So it means that we need to do better. We need to do better. Over to you, Susana. What do you think? We really need to do better.
Indeed. One could argue that it's not difficult to do better. After being at the 7% level, it should be...
Well, I was one of the 7%. And the other issue, Susana, is the one and done part. When I was, of course, the first female ambassador to the UN in Geneva and in New York. And when you see the pictures, because we tend to put the pictures of ambassadors, I saw my picture there and I said, and then more women will follow. Not the case. And there are many situations and cases where there has been only one and done case. But even then, we are in 7%, not good enough. Over to you, Susana.
You said it, Maria Fernanda. It's a shocking number. Having only 7% of women throughout history of the United Nations General Assembly representing member states. And it exposes two big paradoxes. The first is, as we see a steady progress in parity of leadership and upper management in international organizations, the UN General Assembly, where member states are represented and encourage women's participation in the institutions, it remains stubbornly behind. Why is that? Why is it that there is such a conflicting message between what is being said to the institutions through resolutions, through declarations, and what happens among the diplomatic representation? And the second one is that even countries that are absolutely supportive of the notion of women in leadership, countries that are fully behind us as GWL Voices in our really fight for representation, some of those countries have never had a woman at the helm. And I see María
Quietly.
Ana Maria, I wasn't going to mention the countries yet. So Ana Maria, of course, will come up in a second, and she will speak on behalf of Spain. And the other country is Mexico. And we will have, again, the ambassador speaking on what is happening. And we will have here 3 countries represented: Slovenia, Mexico, and Spain. The 3 of them forcefully fighting with us on this notion of having women at the leadership. The 3 of them supporting us in our rotation for equality campaign in the General Assembly, in the presidency of the General Assembly, and of course in our Madam Secretary General campaign. So we have no doubt about the commitment that these 3 countries have, these 3 governments have. Still, 2 of them never had a woman representing the government, the country, in the General Assembly. And of course, these questions the notion of what will happen next year when we dedicate ourselves to find the right Secretary General to succeed Secretary General Antonio Guterres. And to have that conversation, I will invite the 3 ambassadors, Ambassador Ana María Alonso, please, from Spain, Ambassador Saša Jurečko from Slovenia, and Ambassador Alicia Buenrostro from Mexico. Please join us to have a conversation around this audience. And let me start with you, Ana María, and I was not intending to embarrass anyone. Particularly, I was not intending to embarrass our good friends and supporters, but we could not hide the fact that this was the case. So, given the context and looking at what is coming, how do you see the process of the election of the next Secretary General in the context we are? What is Spain's view in all of this?
Susana, you're not embarrassing me. I am embarrassing myself, maybe. I'm feeling quite called out after hearing your voice and after listening to all the data that you have shown us here. So first of all, thank you very much. Thank you very much to GWL Voices and to the Ford Foundation for hosting us here today. The question you're asking me is very tricky. How do I see? It's like you're asking me to foresee into the future what might happen in the election of the next Secretary General of the United Nations. This is difficult to foresee, to know what is going to happen, given the current climate in the world. So, when we started this journey with you, with GWL Voices, and you presented us with the initiative to rotate gender, to have gender parity in the PGA, in the presidency of the General Assembly, and to support your initiative for nominating Madam Secretary General. We, from our president of the government, that is like our prime minister, to our minister of foreign affairs, we were all, and we are still behind these 2 initiatives. Okay, but here's the thing. The climate is not the right one at the moment, but we will still support that and insist and keep on insisting that after 80 years of existence of this organization, we need to have more women in positions of power, of decision-making. So as Secretary General, as you said, never one. Why? Is there not a right woman in the world who can fit in those shoes and wear the suit of a Secretary General, is it so difficult? No. There are plenty of women. Actually, there is 50% of the population are women. So I guess that nowadays, in the 21st century, enough women have had access to university, and they could fit in those shoes. Here, Susana, María Fernanda, you have both done things that, or been in offices, high offices, and of course, you have had those responsibilities. So you are an example. We have here a female ambassador from Germany. Well, of course, how do I foresee what is going to come up? Okay, I'm going to be not pessimistic, but I'm going to be realistic. Maybe difficult because of, the situation that we are in nowadays. I don't want to continue with this explanation, but I think that it's going to be difficult, but nevertheless, we're going to continue pushing for it. Thank you.
Thanks, Ana María. Saša, what is Slovenia's perspective?
Thank you so much. And first of all, thank you for this opportunity to be here today in the presentation of this very important report on women in multilateralism. We are very happy to be here with our friends from Mexico and Spain. And thank you, of course, for bringing us together again. I would actually like to speak a little bit about the context that we are in right now and Slovenia's kind of place in it as well before I turn to your question. As you already mentioned, Slovenia is a strong supporter for your GWL Voices initiatives on the PGA as well as the SG. So that's very clear. But gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls have long been a key priority of Slovenia's foreign policy. And we are deeply concerned by the global pushback on women's rights that has taken place over the past decades, but certainly in the current times as well, is getting stronger, unfortunately. Today we gather at a significant moment in time as we celebrate this year, the 30th anniversary of the Beijing Platform for Action. And later this year, we will also mark the 25th anniversary of Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security. These anniversaries serve not only as a reminder of what we have achieved, but also an opportunity to reflect on our progress and take action to move things along. We have heard some troubling statistics gathered in your report, and thank you actually for collecting that. It seems like a really painstaking task. I will not repeat the numbers, but the statistic that actually I was shocked by the most was the statistics about only 7% of parliament representatives being women. And of course, we all know that there has never been a woman that served as the UN Secretary General, and only 4 women have held the position of the PGA. That's 4 out of 79. That's also a shocking statistic. But I would like to add one more statistic. At the general debate of the 79th session of the General Assembly last year, only 10% of the speakers were women. These numbers are really troubling, especially when women and girls make up half of the world's population and thus present also half of its potential. And how can we afford to overlook so much untapped potential and talent? Despite the progress made in recent decades, which the report clearly shows as well, we saw the bars actually going up, there is progress, but it's very slow, and we are far from where we need to be. Because barriers do remain, and women continue to be underrepresented, especially in diplomacy and multilateralism. Let me turn now to Slovenia. For us, the full, equal, and meaningful participation in all aspects of society and at all levels is essential to building resilient, peaceful, and inclusive communities. The findings from this report really serve as a stark reminder that we must do more to increase women's representation. The facts are clear, and now it's time to take We really believe that action actually starts at home in our capital, since it is the member states who send permanent representatives and the member states who nominate candidates, men and women, to lead international organizations. And this leads me now to my country, Slovenia. We have a feminist foreign policy. This policy guides our approaches in development cooperation, our work in multilateral organizations, but also, among other areas, also our internal policies in the ministry, where 15 years ago, Slovenia launched its first project focused on equal opportunities within the diplomatic service. While we do still have progress to make, we have achieved quite a lot in advancing women's leadership. For example, women hold about half of the middle and senior leader positions in our ministry, with the minister also being a woman. Furthermore, almost 40% of Slovenia's embassies are led by women, including over 40% of our diplomatic missions to international organizations. And to make the connection to the report, Slovenia actually falls in the category of the 56 countries who have had more than one woman permanent representatives in New York. Let me also mention that my colleague in Geneva is actually an active member of the first ever advisory board on gender equality to the presidents of the Human Rights Council. Therefore, in the multilateral fora, we are involved in actually many discussions here in New York and in Geneva about how to improve gender equality in multilateral organizations. And we strongly support all initiatives aimed at achieving gender parity, as already mentioned, PGA, SG, and any other activity. Right now, we're actually working within the discussions on the revitalization of the work of the General Assembly, which actually also discusses the General Assembly, the Secretary General appointment, and of course also the appointment of the PGA. We believe, let me just conclude by saying that we believe that change is long overdue, and we believe that patriarchy is outdated, or at least it should be outdated. We are ready to take action, and you can count on our support. What better inspiration can we give to a young girl than the voice and an image of the next Madam Secretary General?
Thanks, Saša. I have to say that the three countries that are represented here, the three of them have feminist foreign policies. And let me now move to Alicia. Mexico has been a leading country on feminist foreign policy, particularly in our part of the world. So what is your view, your government's view on the matters that we are discussing?
Okay, let me thank you very much for this forum, and let me go directly into the question besides Mexico's foreign policy, feminist foreign policy, and go into the Secretary General's, the next Secretary General. I think that, the only way of moving forward is with effort, is doing the homework. Nobody will do it for us. GWL, 6 years ago, was created, with the purpose of being here. It's been 6 years. Now we are in the fourth foundation. Now they have a report. Now we can see very clearly where we're standing, where are the spaces, the many spaces that have now to be fulfilled by women and so on. How do you do this? Working. Doing your homework. I mean, men are not coming to give us any, nobody will say, this is for you because you were a woman or because you are a smart woman. No, we gain everything that we have. We have earned it, working slowly, gradually, and consistently. And that is the formula. If you see how much we have gained from the past, you will see that there has been movement. The last report from GWL, it didn't mention because it was another year, that now Mexico has a female president, And we have not only a female president, but we also have the president of the Supreme Court is also a woman. The president of the Chamber of Deputies is a woman as well. We have now, and she's here, for the first time ever, we have created a ministry for women's ministry. And we have, for the first time here ever, a secretary, a minister, who is a woman as well. So how do you do that? doing the homework, being consistent. Now we are at the fourth foundation, and now we have one more woman. We were shown that, there are some more women, that have taken positions within the UN. So we have to we have to keep on moving. The next president of the General Assembly will be Germany, and it will be a woman, no? So, of course, there has been change. Of course, we have got, many positions. What happens? It's not enough, no? We need more numbers, and we want the spaces as well. No? Alicia Bárcena used to say, we don't want anything but the power. We women want power. That's it, So we need to keep on doing the homework. If we want a Secretary General, a female one, no, we need to present good candidates that are feasible, candidates that will convince, this audience and thousands of audiences, to say, I am capable of really representing and helping the world at this stage, a stage in which we have come to the end of an era, an age that will need, of course, the energy of a woman. No, and that energy is different from a man, and she can represent this and this and this and this. But we need to do the homework. Where are the women? I don't see them. They're all around, and we need to come and present them. And it's the time because the context, the international context, as you know, we have come to the end of this 80-year period of an international world order that was created after 1945, and we have to create a new one. And we need those rules as well, because we cannot leave all the countries, just like that. We need to abide by international law and human rights, because in the end, the three pillars of the Charter are perfect for anybody, for any human being, which is peace and security, because I want that for my children and future generations. Development, because we need it. And I want also human rights in order for everybody to flourish and to look for your own lives, to be happy and so on. No? And we are in very difficult circumstances, very difficult ones. And we need to show that we as women we are prepared, and we have the women that we need for these very complex times that we are living through. And so what do we need? Well, we need to do the homework in terms of presenting those leaders and advancing that, taking that challenge, organizing. In the case of Latin America, we are absolutely sure that it's our region, the one that has that the next Secretary General needs to come from Latin America. And we have many women that are powerful, that are intelligent, that are smart, no? But we need to work and start moving on. Will it be difficult? Yes, very difficult. Anna has already mentioned that. And probably if we don't make it this time, we will do so for the next one as well. But the thing is to continue doing the homework, to continue working, and to continue being together and working together, because that's the only way in which we have been able to have 10 resolutions, women's resolution in the Security Council. No? So we have, everything is there. It's a matter of being organized. It's a matter of presenting what we need at the right time. It's exactly to do what we need to understand. What are the rules with which we are playing with? But again, I think that we have everything. Now, in terms of feminist foreign policy, Mexico was the first country in the Global South to adopt a feminist foreign policy. For me, for Alicia, the feminist foreign policy starts at home. I do not like talking about feminist foreign policy if we do not have breast feed rooms or whatever at the foreign ministry. If we don't have guardians or takers of how do you call this, caregiving, for children at the foreign ministry. If we don't have all the instruments, if the husbands or partners of any female diplomat, to be able to come along with her, he needs or she needs to have a space, where to work and develop herself or himself or whatever. We need probably to develop a corridor of consulates or embassies where work is less tough than in Washington, D.C. or here in New York. No, so that you can help at certain stages when women are having children and so on. When we have all that, we can say that we are empowering women and that we are enabling them to move from first secretary to counselor without a problem because they are not stuck, because we don't have the part-time jobs or because we don't have the international instruments, for a bilateral instrument that would enable my husband, for example, to work abroad, or because I am sent when I have a 2-year or 3 children that are 3, 4, and 5, or 3, 4, and 6, and I am sent to, I don't know, to the OAS or to Geneva or whatever. So it's about thinking about women. How are we supporting you? And then, of course, we need to open spaces at the multilateral level. And that is something that you work as well with your foreign ministry. So for me, the feminist foreign policy, yes, we want more women. For the first time ever, for example, we are carrying on these every 4 or 5 years, you have an entry, into the foreign service. And for the first time, it will be 99 people. And from those, 66 will be women. That is something that has been really structured around the idea and the objective that we need strengthening that. And you do that on a consistent basis. So for me, it's not magic. We bring a lot of good energy and positive energy because I also believe that when we have a Madame Secretary General, she would have to exercise power and leadership from a female role and a female energy and a female leadership. And we are on our way. So let's keep on moving. Thank you.
Thanks, Alicia, and thanks to the three of you, because you reminded me again of the elephant in the room. We do have an elephant in the room with the election of the next Secretary General, given the circumstances that we are facing. And I just want to make it clear to you that we in GWL Voices recognize that. We don't live in a vacuum. Having said that, we are totally convinced of what Alicia just said. We need to work on this. We need to push boundaries. We need to really, really keep raising the issue to discuss and to find solutions. And, it is very interesting because we see in these days a very, very contrasting leadership styles, and many leaders embodying aggressive, confrontational, and traditionally masculine approaches to their leadership. And we can relate very fast into names, I'm sure, when I speak about this. But we also believe that there is a growing fatigue around these very, very aggressive styles. At the beginning, it might sound, well, that's good. Let's make it. But when things keep being aggressive, and when aggressiveness gets on you, then you start to reconsider, is this what we want? And we also see women leaders throughout the world that have different styles. They are not all the same. Some of them are harder, some of them are softer, but there are many, many styles of women leaders throughout the world, either today or in the recent past. So as we consider the election of the next Secretary General, is there an appetite to have a distinguished woman leader somewhere from the world? And I hear you about Latin America, but we as GWL Voices talk about leadership. We don't talk about what belongs to member states, which is regions. But is there an appetite to have a more productive, consensus-driven style at the UN? Some argue once again that now is not the right time, that political dynamics work against this idea, and Anna, you sort of hinted that. Is this the case? And I have to say, I have this reasoning disconcerting. When I examine what member states seek in the next Secretary General and consider all the challenges ahead, I see no reason why a woman should be automatically discounted. Women have consistently demonstrated a strong stewardship of resources, which is a big, big ticket item these days, whether it is at home or in corporations, whether it's at the local level, at the national level, or at the global level. So stewardship is something that is requested. Women have it. We have proven it. Women tend to manage risk with a multidimensional perspective, fostering more balance in their risk management. That is needed. Women listen, seek compromise, and build broad support for solutions. That's what we do day in and day out. And women stay focused on impact and results. What more is needed from the system to transform it, to retool it, to bring it to what it is required in the 21st century, than focus on impact and resolve? No member state has disputed this. I haven't heard anything. Of course, then comes the notion of this masculine leadership. But when you focus, and going back to the point that you made, Alicia, about having women coming to the fore, when you focus on women, their style, their profile, I see no reason to believe that member states should discount women just for being women. Maybe the question is there such a woman? Is there the right profile of a woman? That's a different question. And I want to emphasize that. It's not a matter of discounting women, it's maybe asking the profile, which, by the way, should be the case for men too, and not necessarily is the question asked. So I will submit to you that there is a deep bench of qualified women that can come to the fore and can be considered. I am certain, if not chosen, it's not going to be for the lack of options. And let me get a little bit personal here for a minute. Some 10 years ago, I ran for the Secretary General position. That was 2016. I ran with 6 other women. We were 7 in total, 7 out of 13, which made an incredibly competitive election process. I can assure you that the collective experience of these 7 women, both in depth and breadth, was incredible. But it was not enough. So I would like to bring the attention. Having a deep bench was not enough. So what do we need now? What are we as GWL Voices trying to get at? I will argue, we will argue, that we need more than a social media buzz, civil society speaking about this. We need the public commitment of the majority of member states to having women as candidates. This has to be pressure brought to the fore by the highest level of leadership representing governments. And we have a huge opportunity, as UNGA 80 is on the way this coming September, to have heads of state and heads of government saying, yes, we want to promote women candidates. This is the reality. The world is calling for a fresh approach. And we, women, are ready to deliver it. And if we have the population who have never had the opportunity to have a representative as head of the United Nations cannot make it now, when is the right time? So we have to work on this, as Alicia said. And maybe, I can open a little bit of a conversation with the audience and our colleagues here, and just throw a question. What will be required to have a woman that brings the appetite of member states, but let's be honest, of the Security Council, and let's be more honest, of the P5 in the current geopolitical circumstances, to say, well, this is somebody who we can live with. Remember, this is not the choice of my life is somebody we can live with, because the P5 had different priorities. What is needed there? Because we had 7 last time, and when you look at the list, we all had different profiles, but an incredible experience, and we didn't make it. So does anybody want to volunteer? What will be needed this time around? Interesting question. There's a mic there, so you don't need to be shy. You are thinking, okay. With our thinking hats, who wants to come first?
You already said social media
Wait.
I mean, Thank you so much. You already said social media. I think that if the society make a really pressure with social media, could be not a big difference, but a little difference in the concern.
Let me say something about that, and I'll go to that in a second. Last time we had the Ones for 7 Billion campaign. They did an amazing job. This time we have the One for 8 Billion campaign. In fact, we are partnering with them, and they're very strong on mobilizing. We had 7 candidates out of that big push. Was not enough. So who was there?
Hi, my name is Viviana Kristisevich. I'm the director of a human rights organization and a founding member of the GWL campaign. And I think one of the big questions that we're all asking ourselves is, what's the profile of the new, hopefully, woman Secretary General? And what are some of the discussions that we need to have so that that we have not only a fantastic woman, but a fantastic woman that can do a brilliant job for the challenges that we're living through today. And I think that some of those areas of expertise and experience and competencies have been, were part of the pool of candidates that were presented at the time. And I think right now we have to highlight a few of them that have to do, and I think you've done a wonderful job of, through going to the about the competencies, name some of them, but that have to do with dealing with international conflicts and peace keeping, and how to do negotiations for supporting democracies and building responses that are up to the task on issues of peace and security. There are major challenges, even if we are not putting them at the forefront in some of the discussions about the climate emergency and the multiple climate emergencies that we're facing right now. And I think that there are many reasons why we see some of the disparate impacts of climate emergency and the role that a Secretary General that is a woman, that is thinking about inequality, can bring to the table, as well as issues of forced migration and the many other challenges that multilateralism faces because of the environment, the political environment that we're living in right now, that because of the changes in landscape require that we rethink multilateralism and that we do it with fairness, with purpose, and also looking at the budget. So.
Well, then the question is, how do you build a coalition of states, of member states, around 1, 2, 3 candidates that can be acceptable to all? Because in order to have a Secretary General, you need to find somebody who is acceptable, particularly to the P5. So how do we build that coalition around a number of women candidates that can really, really address? Anna, I'll go to you second.
I suggest, if I may, to get from the public and then give back the floor to the speakers here,
Okay.
so you can react to what we hear. And because we have like 7 minutes left total. So just that.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Judith Arenas from APCO, representing the private sector. We've been grappling with this issue about what does all the changing environment around the language around gender equality mean when we're already not even allowed to talk about gender in this country officially, and where women is also a word that's on the blacklist. So we now have an even bigger challenge to deal with. The campaign was ambitious to start with, but we're facing a newly defined environment and landscape, which is like, how do we say it? In this movie says, these kind of quicksands, and it's challenging. So a couple of suggestions on this, because there's stuff that we have to achieve before we even get to the geopolitical level if we don't want a P5 veto. So first one is about meeting people where they are and thinking about how we change the language so that the language isn't an immediate shutdown. Because the biggest challenge we have now is how do we actually get people to even listen to us without discarding the campaign from the start? And that requires adapting language and meeting people where they are. And that also requires a change of how we present the information to basically ensure that people understand that this is not about disadvantaging men. This is a win-win for everyone, because we have the evidence. Bibi, you mentioned women, peace, and security, for instance. There is evidence out there about where women make better leaders, but the challenge is that we can't be talking to ourselves. And the not talking to ourselves will require a big mental break and a redefinition of how we phrase things, because it's not the way that we would. But if we want to win, we've got to change.
I thank you so much for that. And that's why I mentioned that what I hear from member states doesn't indicate to me that automatically women are discarded. That was intended to meet your point. Let me go back to our guest here. Anna.
Thank you very much, Susana. And well, listening to what you have been mentioning about the profile of the next, the prospective next Madam Secretary General would be, listening to you, and you have listed a number of characters that or requisites that that woman should have, and then listening to you in the public about what else would be needed. It's overwhelming. It's really overwhelming. It's like I have never, ever heard this list of requirements for gentleman Secretary General to be appointed Secretary General. It's like, why are we giving us women a long list of requisites? I think that the women that, of course, propose themselves and put themselves forward, when you mentioned in 2016, previous election, I'm sure, completely sure, dead sure, that they filled in all those requirements. So what do we need to have the next Secretary General to be a woman? What we need is political will from member states. That's what we need. And we need the P5, of course, and we need a a profile, a person, a woman they can live with. Exactly. But we need behind the candidate the full power of all the member states, of at least relevant member states. And that's political will. And that's why we are sitting here, Mexico, Slovenia, and Spain. And I'm sure that there are many other member states out there who support the initiative of having a Madame Secretary General. But we need the political power. Nothing else. We don't need a tall, whatever, knowledgeable woman. We would just need the right person, the right woman, nothing else, and nothing less.
And that's why we thank you so much, Mexico, Slovenia, and Spain, because what you did, for example, with the declaration last November, where you were able to gather 78 member states backing the declaration that you were leading, meaning 81 member states accepting the notion within the context of the revitalization of the General Assembly that women candidates were needed and accepting the notion of this rotation between men and women at the presidency of the General Assembly. So that willingness, that leadership is needed, and we thank you for that, and we will continue to push so that we have more member states saying it out loud and clear. And the next General Assembly is an important milestone. Listen, we need to finish here, and I will pass the floor to María Fernanda to put the closure to this. We could stay here much longer. We will leave this place with a lot of work before us, as Alicia tasked us earlier. María Fernanda?
Well, I had the impression that both Alicia and Saša wanted, a short, quick reaction to what we heard in the room, a couple of minutes. I don't know if we can stay in this room, but I think everybody's eager to listen to you if you want to add something before we close.
You want to say something? Yeah, maybe very quickly. Actually, I wanted to mention the statement that Susana just mentioned. As I see it, this is actually a reflection of a political will of a large number of member states, and this actually gives me hope. And then there has been a further couple of statements in the past couple of months, one on the SG selection and one on the PGA selection, where we also had strong support from member states. There was, I think, 55 and 65 supporters. So I do see it as the political will and the momentum for this change to happen, to have a woman as an SG is actually there, is in the civil society, but is also in the member states. I mean, even the member states who didn't join the statements, I think most of them in these discussions have brought this up anyway. So I do see that there is political will, but we need to work on it further, of course.
Yeah, I do agree that with Saša, but I think as well, we create and we build that political will. And how do you do it? You have to work, no? So this coalition is important. You have already gone through that process. So you know exactly what is it about, no? And so we need that coalition. We have to build up that political will. You move, you lobby, no, and move. That's the only way. Otherwise, we're sitting here together. This is a step forward, of course, but then if we go back home and then we go into our normal daily lives, we won't make a change. So we wanted, you have to create it, no? So we have this coalition that we have with Spain and with Slovenia has worked very well, no? But it has to increase, it has to be enhanced. We need more numbers, and we need to keep moving, and we need to be active. No, you create the environment. You filled it up. No, we can't be reactive, and that's what I think that we have. This is the right time to start moving. So let's start the movement.
Fantastic. What a great way to finish. And believe me, I'm going to take 10 seconds to say 4 sentences. The first sentence, please do read our report. It's really worthwhile. It's on our website. You will see all the information and data we shared. Second sentence, we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to make it happen this way. this time. And Susana was so, you know, she spoke in first person, her own personal experience, and we know what happened. We cannot afford having that happen again. We cannot wait 10 more years. I'm sorry to say. 81 countries, but we need 193 committed. And for that, I would like to thank the 3 countries that are seated here, that are, you know, doing the heavy lifting to really create this enabling environment for that to happen. And the third sentence is something that Alicia mentioned. We need to do homework, but it is collective homework, collective strength, smart advocacy, use our voices, our influence to make it happen. And that is true among member states, but that is true also from civil society, GWL, 1 for 8 billion, and many others. I think it counts, you know, we the peoples, you know, raising their voices. It also counts. And the last sentence is, thank you for being here. Thank you. It's been great. Thank you, Susana, you know, the partner in crime, but thank you to GWL Voices team here. Thank you to the research team that made the report possible. Thank you, Socio Público and Paul, and thank you all once again. So as soon as we exit the door, let's start the homework. Thank you.